103.2 Preston FM.
Your community, your radio.
My guest, it's our gardening guru, Sue Jeffries. So, Sue, a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Huey.
And what a beautiful afternoon.
It's amazing. Indian summer, isn't it, they call it, when it's really warm like this.
Is
September.
it confusing all our plants? Are they kind of coming back out of hibernation and whatever?
Yeah, there's some things are flowering twice, sort of plants and shrubs that you only think are going to flower once. They're sort of still flowering, or they're sending out more flowers now.
I do love it, and I'm pleased to say so far I've not heard any doom and gloom about, because it's so nice today, it means we're going to have an horrific winter.
I don't think there's any pattern anymore at all.
There isn't, is there?
Anything can happen, can't it?
And is this, I understand this week is Gardening for Wildlife Week, is it?
Yes, Wild About Gardens it is.
Wild About Gardens. Tell us a bit about that, Sue.
Well, it's the Royal Horticultural Society, the RHS, and the Wildlife Trusts have got together across the country, and they're trying to promote people to do a little bit in their garden that can help wildlife. And particularly this year, they're thinking about us leaving a space in our garden where some of our pollinators can hibernate over winter. Because people don't realise this, but butterflies hibernate.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they hatch out of the pupas, and you see them flying around. I've seen lots of red admirals recently in my garden, and peacock butterflies. But what happens in the winter is they don't die when it's cold. They actually go and find somewhere that's dry and dark and undisturbed, usually sort of maybe in your shed, and they just sort of wrap themselves up there and they hibernate and come out in the spring.
Right, I thought you were going to probably say kind of plants, kind of fauna, etc., but actually things like sheds and dark places like that.
Sheds
they'd be the places.
Little crevices in your wall, especially dry stone walls, if they can get in there. And same with bumblebees as well. Bumblebees are quite happy somewhere in the ground where they've just got maybe some old dry leaves, and they can just find a sheltered spot, maybe in an old flower pot. As long as it's sort of dry and sheltered and they're undisturbed, they're quite happy there.
And of course you don't have to live out in the country, do you, and have a kind of country garden. I mean, if you're a city dweller or a very, very small kind of patio, you can make space available for wildlife.
Yeah, and I think for hibernating, that the key to that is just to leave a little bit of messiness somewhere in your garden. So don't clear everything up and make it look spick and span, because then they won't have anywhere to go to hibernate. So they're particularly like a compost heap. So if you put all your compost on it now and just leave it undisturbed over winter, they'd be quite happy sort of hiding in there probably. Or just a little corner, not all of your garden, but a corner of your garden, like a pile of old wood, like some old pots or something with some dried up leaves in them. I think, have you seen bug hotels that people make sometimes?
Yeah, are they a kind of dome? Do they look something like a dome?
Yeah, they can be any sort of shape, but they usually are some sort of frame. It could be wooden or made of anything really. And people often cut up lengths, maybe sort of bamboo canes, lots of different shapes and sizes. So different sized animals can crawl in and hide in there and hibernate. Because they do go into, if you cut down tall plants and leave a bit of the stem sticking up, they can crawl into that and hibernate in there as well. So if you just put all these sort of different shaped holes together in some frame and put it needs to be undisturbed is the important thing. So there's no point in building one and then keep poking around in it looking for insects, because they won't like that. So it's leaving it somewhere and then just leaving it over winter. And ladybirds can go in there as well because they hibernate too.
So this is an annual kind of week, is it, every year that the Horticultural Society put this together? Yeah,
they promote it, and I think each year they have a different emphasis. So I think last year it was more about pollinators and growing flowers for pollen, and this time it's thinking about where are those insects going to live in the winter, where can they hibernate, because as we said before, we've no idea what the winter's going to be like. It could be mild like last winter, or it could be horrendous like the two before.
And I take it people can go online and find information, go onto a horticultural site or your own site maybe for advice, etc.
Yeah, I've got a link on the front page of my website. I've got a little icon. People can click on it. It'll take them to Wild About Gardens.
And the website is?
It's SJ Garden Advice, all one word, and that's .co.uk.
Well, I was out quite late last night, well, until it was going dark in the garden, really with something of a heavy art, because I was planting heart with an H.
Yeah.
did I say my H then? Because I was putting in winter pansies. Now, I don't like winter pansies because they very seldom ever flower. They look straggly, but I do it because I think, well, we need a bit of colour. What would be an alternative?
Well, they might be a bit more expensive, but some of the evergreen little shrubs you can get now, skimmias.
Skimmias?
Yeah, and you can get there's two different sorts. You can get one with a really bright, glossy red berry on it, which is just always looks nice over winter. And there's one called Skimmia rubella, which has sort of evergreen leaves and clusters of pinky white buds, and then they stay as buds for quite a long time, and then they open up into flowers. So they're quite nice and reliable plants to have.
And do they flower for quite some time to come?
Yeah, they're actually small shrubs, so they're a little bit more expensive than your winter bedding, but they'll last a lot longer. And they'll, if you keep repotting them, they'll last for many years. Those will. They won't just die off in the spring.
And what are some of the other? I mean, being in the garden at the moment, it kind of brings back the memories from when I was putting the plants in way back in May, etc.
Yeah.
So some are gone. What are the kind of things and other things you should be doing in the garden at the moment then?
Well, getting your bulbs in. So, and I know when you put them in, you haven't got a lot to show, have you? There's nothing there. You have to be patient.
Yes.
But it is worth putting them in now, and then you'll have a fantastic display in the spring. If you put snowdrops in, obviously they flower first, probably February time. Thing to remember is with snowdrops, if they don't like to be very deep in the ground, they're quite shallow, and they like to be dry, somewhere where it's dry. They don't like to get too wet. But you can get lovely little miniature daffodils now that look really nice in pots.
Yes, they are nice.
Tete-a-tete, Jetfire. What's the other one? February Gold, obviously. That they all flower quite early on. So it's worth, if you put in a mixed pot in with a few pansies and that, if you put some bulbs in under them, they'll come up through in the spring and replace that. So bulbs definitely. And what I've been doing a lot of in the last few weeks is collecting seeds. So it's been perfect weather. A lot of the summer flowers are finished now, haven't they? If you've left the seed heads on, they'll have dried out and they're just ready now for collecting. So if you're a thrifty gardener, then you can go around collecting them. I always collect them on a dry day like today. I cut off quite a bit of stem with the seed head. Maybe about 20-30 centimetres, and then I put them sort of upside down into a paper bag to catch the seeds. If they're not totally dry, I just hang them up in a shed or a greenhouse for a bit. I usually tie the stems together and just hang them up, and then if you give them a good shake, usually the seeds just fall out, and you can save them up and sow them next spring.
So you actually sow them in the spring. You don't. Are they quite easy to grow from seed?
It depends which sort of plant. Some grow easily. Like foxglove are great. They'll grow very easily from seed. Some of the annual flowers are great, like marigolds will grow really easily from seed. Nigella, love in the mist. Cornflowers. So quite a range of things. So if anyone's grown a few little annual cut flowers this year, then don't just think that's it, finished when they've stopped flowering. You can collect the seeds. California poppies, another lovely one as well, bright orange colour that is.
And they're quite easy. California poppies are quite easy to grow from seed.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and nasturtiums, if you've got any of those. If you just leave the seed on the ground, some of them will flower next year anyway, but you can collect some as well and then put them where you want.
Well, the last time we met, of course, was shortly after Manchester and the award over there in Manchester. So what's coming up next for you, Sue?
Well, I'm going to share some of my design tips.
Yes.
So I won my prize for Best in Show for one of my mini gardens. So I'm doing an introduction to garden design, which starts next week. It's a Thursday morning class. So I've got 6 weeks there. So I'll be talking to people about how to make the best of their garden. Particularly small gardens, because people get a bit stuck sometimes for knowing what to do in a small garden. So I'm going to be talking about that. I'm also hoping to maybe run some gardening classes at a hospice nearby. So I'm going to see them tomorrow morning, actually, to see if I can make some arrangements there to actually run some more sort of therapeutic gardening, I suppose.
And of course, gardening can be very therapeutic, can't it? It doesn't have to be the chore of looking for weeds and doing the things that sometimes I put off for weeks and weeks and weeks. It can be very therapeutic, can't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So is that a new venture?
Yes, yeah. I just a friend of mine mentioned she was volunteering at a hospice, and she sort of said they had gardens there, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So I rang them up and arranged to go and see them tomorrow morning and see if there's anything we can do together. I'd love to do something where I'm working with some of the patients there and their families as well, because obviously with gardening it can be any ages, any groups of people and any abilities, because you can still garden even if you're in a wheelchair. So it's all different sorts of abilities, and just get people doing something. And you can do as much as you want. When I used to teach teenagers, they used to love digging and chopping down trees. They were their favourite things. But you can also be sowing seeds. You can do things sat down, you don't have to be stood up all the time. So there's lots of different things you can get involved in with it.
And what better therapy than colours and, of course, the smells of the various different plants, etc.
Yeah. I was just thinking, actually, when you're talking about what can you put in your pots, obviously there's some evergreen herbs which look nice. So lavender and rosemary still look nice over the winter, as an evergreen plant.
Interesting you should mention lavenders. I'm never really sure what you do with lavenders. Do you cut them back? Do you just leave them?
Well, you need to keep them trimmed, because if you don't, they sort of get very woody and out of shape. So are yours in a pot, or do you have them in the ground?
In the ground.
In the ground, right. Well, about this time of year, they're just about finishing, aren't they, with the flowers? So I'd sort of deadhead them. I'd take the flower stalks off. But at this time of year, I wouldn't take any more off. So I'd just trim all the flower stalks off, but leave everything else. And then maybe round about, say, March time next spring, you can then start trimming them. So when the weather's not as cold, really, you wait till it's sort of near spring starting. And then you just cut into them to tidy up the shape. But you need to leave a little of last year's wood, if that makes sense. So don't cut into it when it's all gone bare and woody, because lavenders won't grow back from that.
They won't.
If you do, no, they won't. If you cut them right to the ground, that's it. End of story.
Right,
so you have to leave at least an inch or so of last year's growth on. So stuff that's fresher growth with the leaves still on. As long as you leave about an inch of that all the way around, you can trim as much as you want off there.
Right. So there we are. So some tips for the coming week for us all to be busy out in the garden. So again, just remind us of the design course. That's when next
it starts
week?
Next Thursday morning, so it's 9:30 till 11:30 over in Worley, and people can check the details on my website. Like I say, we're going to be, hopefully people will come along with pictures of their gardens and all their garden design problems, and we'll work through that and give them some ideas of what to do.
And it must be very interesting, Sue, from your perspective, because, I mean, you work with schools, and as you've just said, maybe working with a hospice. I mean, the kind of diversity here that you do, it must be very, very interesting.
Yeah, such a range of people, and but people are always sort of just quite interested and passionate in particular things as well. So some people just love their veg growing, and really that's all they're interested in. Some people love growing from seed and find that so rewarding. And I find that, even though I've been doing it for years, just the fact everything germinated and you got a plant at the end from a tiny seed, that's always a bit of an inspiring thing to do, I think. And certainly children enjoy that as well. They enjoy that coming through. Some people are just interested in the design and the colours. I'm a member of a garden club, and we went up to a beautiful garden a couple of Saturdays ago up in North Yorkshire, called Scampston Walled Garden, and that was absolutely stunning. It was a bit wet, unfortunately, but you could still see a huge range of different plants, and some of them are getting their autumn colour now, so you had the sort of red and orange leaves coming through. There was some fantastic seed heads of plants as well, and they had one section of the garden, because it's all split up, was all just full of beds of grasses, but with all the flower heads on. So they just look really beautiful, sort of, because in the wind they're sort of moving around.
Yes.
So some people enjoy that side of it as well, just the visual spectacle of it. So I think it's very varied thing to be involved in.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, Sue, as always, a pleasure to have you in the studio. Just again, tell us where people can find the website to have a look, because there's lots of information on there.
Yeah, it's SJ Garden Advice, all one word, and that's .co.uk, and that's got some free tip sheets on it about all different things to do with gardening, including seed collecting, and also all about the courses and workshops I do as well.
Lovely. Well, pleasure to have you back in the studio, and look forward to our next gardening encounter.
Sunday nights from 9. Join Steve Franklin live for Preston FM's weekly request show.
Could I have some Pink Floyd for my mum?
Gino by Dixie's Midnight Runners.
Can I request 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton, please?
What a way to make a living.
Lavender by Marillion.
Sunday nights from 9. 103.2 Preston FM. The weekend stops here.